All right, next let's talk about another important aspect of working with inheritance, which is something called super. So I want to define another version of our triangle, a new class called color triangle. And this is a little different than what we saw previously. This was our shy triangle, where the shy triangle had the same constructor as our base triangle class, A and B, right? Those are the only two things it expects, and it works the same. However, if I want to add a new property on, so color triangle has a side A, a side B, and then a color, because it's a color triangle. If I try that, I'll just do it over here. Here's our base triangle, class, color triangle, and I'm going to extend triangle. I'll add a constructor. I want it to have A, B, and color. And I'll set this dot A to be A, this dot B to be B. This dot color will be color. This should work based on what we've learned so far. However, if I try and instantiate a new color triangle with 3, 4, and red, I want to set color to be red, I get an error. What is it telling me? Must call super constructor in derived class before accessing this. So that's a long way of telling us that we're doing something wrong. We have a class called color triangle that is extending triangle, and triangle itself has its own constructor. However, we've now written our own constructor in here, and this is a problem because of the way we've written this constructor. We have two choices. We can either do what we did earlier with shy triangle and just rely on the parent constructor. Right? If we don't define one, it's automatically called. That's what we saw in the previous video. But that's not going to work here because I want to add a new property specific to color triangle called color. So I need a way to call this constructor method from the parent. And there's a very easy way of doing it. It looks like this. We use super. So this special function here, super followed by parentheses, will be a reference in this case to the superclass, the triangle's constructor. This is how we call the parent's constructor. So we need to call that first before we can add any extra stuff on top. And the error message tells us that must call superconstructor in derived class, meaning in the child class, before you can access this. So if you forget, JavaScript is going to usually let you know. So I call super and I'll pass through A and B. Remember, super in this case calls the parent constructor, and it's expecting A first and then B. So I'm just going to pass them through. This is going to call the parent constructor that has this dot A set to A, this dot B set to B, and then allow me to add on whatever else I want afterwards. This dot color equals color. So if I rerun this line, that now makes me a color triangle that has A set to 3, B set to 4, and color set to red. So that's the basic concept, and that's a very common use case for super. When you have a child class or a base class, in our case, color triangle, inheriting or extending a parent class, you may need to call that parent class constructor. You don't need to do it. You don't need to write super if you're relying on the parent class's constructor entirely. But if you're adding some stuff in, if you're adding your own properties, you want to have your own constructor, then you will have to call the parent class constructor using super, and you pass the values through. Note, we don't do this, right? We don't call constructor or like triangle.constructor. JavaScript knows what the superclass is. It knows that it's the triangle constructor that will be called here. So we can end with a very trivial example. Why don't I show you what happens if I extend color triangle? Let's make a class called color happy triangle. It doesn't have to make sense, okay? It will extend color triangle. And in here, I'm going to add a constructor. And this constructor is going to expect us to pass A, B, color, and then maybe instead of happy, I'll call this mood. Color mood triangle. And it's expecting a mood to be provided as well. What I want to do is eventually set this dot mood to be mood, but I'm going to get an error if I try and make a new color mood triangle. I'm going to have to call super. And what does super refer to? What is the superclass of color mood triangle? It's color triangle, this guy here. And this constructor expects A, B, and color. So Again, the names don't matter, but the order does. I'll pass side A, side B, and then color. And then this is going to run the super constructor, which itself is going to call its own superclass constructor, which is the triangle constructor. That will assign this dot A and this dot B. That finishes up. So then we assign this dot color. That means we're done with this constructor. So finally, this dot mood is set to mood. I don't know why we would have a color mood triangle, but I'll just show you. New color mood triangle. It wants a side A, a side B, a color, green, and a mood will be sad. And you can see that A is set to 3, B is set to 5, color is set to green, mood is set to sad. And all that we did in the color mood triangle constructor was set this dot mood. First, we passed off A, B, and color to the superclass constructor right here, which in turn passes off A and B to its superclass constructor right here. And of course, I have access to all the functionality from color triangle. There really isn't any here, but also everything from triangle, because color mood triangle extends color triangle, which in turn extends triangle. So I get access to get area and get hypotenuse and all of that stuff. If I make a new color mood triangle called tri, TRI, I have access to mood, of course, but then also get area and get hypotenuse. Not like that. Get hypotenuse with an H. Okay, so more examples of inheritance, but the key thing we learned in this video is the role of super, which when you call it as a function like this, we'll call the parent or the superclass's constructor. And remember that JavaScript will generally yell at you if you forget to do that. You have to call super in this case if I then want to add on something else to this.